morning and welcome to Rising. We've got a great show for you today. How are you doing, Jessica?
I'm doing well. I heard it's like a special day for some reason, Robby.
That's right. We have a couple announcements. One, we're celebrating because our YouTube page has passed 2 million subscribers. We are delighted to reach that landmark. That milestone, and we have all the viewers to thank for that. Thank you so much for watching over the years, for trusting us, for getting your news here. So that's great news. And then also, today is the last day in this studio space. Rising the Hill actually entirely is moving into a new studio space that is really cool and really impressive, and I'm so excited about it. I don't do Fridays, so today's my last day here. The show will still film from here tomorrow, but then next week we'll be in the new space. So it's exciting. I'm feeling a little wistful. Was reflecting, the three and a half years now I've spent in this chair next to a wide range of people, or sometimes, distanced, their spirits in the room with me, as yours is right now. But yeah, that's what's going on.
Yes, and to the viewers, I am with you in not having seen the studio beyond Robby's Instagram. So I'm excited too.
Well, we can't wait to show it to you. All right, let's get to our story. Today, we're talking about the race between Trump and Kamala Harris entering a fierce stage. Each candidate has an intense schedule of events and are hitting the swing states hard. Both Trump and Harris will attend rallies and fundraisers across the nation. Meanwhile, the fallout from Tuesday's debate is still rippling throughout the press and through social media. Taylor Swift's endorsement of Kamala Harris that went out to her 280 million followers has driven over 337,000 visitors to the site vote.gov, which directs users on how to register to vote. President Kamala Harris' campaign quickly embraced this endorsement. The campaign has begun sharing Harris Walls friendship bracelets. Those bracelets sold out on Wednesday. Others reacted very differently to the Swift endorsement. One interesting, maybe that's the wrong word, response came from Elon Musk, who wrote, quote, "Fine, Taylor, you win. I will give you a child and guard your cats with my life." Meanwhile, Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, had this to say on Fox News. Let's watch.
Well, look, we admire Taylor Swift's music, but I don't think most Americans, whether they like her music or fans of hers or not, are going to be influenced by a billionaire celebrity who I think is fundamentally disconnected from the interests and the problems of most Americans. Look, when grocery prices go up by 20%, it hurts most Americans. It doesn't hurt Taylor Swift.
Swift's boyfriend, Kansas City Chiefs star Travis Kelce, and his brother Jason Kelce seemingly defended Swift on their podcast. The two poked fun of Elon Musk's Cybertruck and said the car, quote, short circuits going through car washes. And for those who don't keep up with Taylor Swift's every move, Swift's endorsement for Harris came after she was seen with Brittany Mahomes on Sunday. Brittany Mahomes, the wife of Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes, has shown support for former President Donald Trump. Some of Taylor Swift's fans were outraged to see Swift hanging out with a Trump supporter. Reporters yesterday asked Patrick Mahomes who he would be voting for. Let's watch that.
Former President Trump referenced you and your family again today on Fox News in relation to his campaign. I just wonder what your reaction is to seeing that.
Yeah, I think I've always said I don't want my place and my platform to be used to endorse a candidate or do whatever. Either way, I think my place is to inform people to get registered to vote. It's to inform people to do their own research and then make their best decision for them and their family. And so I think that's every time I'm on this stage and I get asked these questions, I'm going to refer back to that because I think that's what makes America so great.
WNBA star Caitlin Clark was also asked in a press conference yesterday if she would be endorsing Harris. Clark didn't directly answer that question. She said she would just use her platform to encourage people to do their own research and to register to vote. So the celebrity endorsements are rolling in. I want to talk about what J.D. Vance said about a billionaire celebrity might not being someone who connects with everyday people. That's Donald Trump. Donald Trump's a billionaire celebrity. So that comment from J.D. Vance, I don't think was carefully made, or maybe it was. Maybe that is how he feels about the person at the top of his ticket. But I thought that was an interesting statement coming from someone running with a billionaire celebrity.
I think it's interesting if you look closely at the Taylor Swift endorsement statement. She doesn't She doesn't talk about economic policy at all, which is where he went to, how the J.D. Vance argues that prices in the economy will be worse under Kamala Harris, and maybe Taylor Swift doesn't care about that or doesn't understand that. Taylor Swift's endorsement of Kamala was based solely in what she said for social cultural reasons, abortion, things like that. That is the part of the GOP agenda that she finds not something she would want to associate herself with. Not that she necessarily maybe thinks Kamala's plan to fix rising prices is good. It had nothing to do with that. So it's interesting what J.D. Vance and Republicans want to center. Those are issues where they could actually get people on their side if they were, some would argue, a little less dogmatic or right-wing on the social issues. Does that hold them back? But that's neither here nor there. I think Caitlin Clark had it right. Actually, I agree with her saying, who cares about, or celebrities, whatever, everybody vote your conscience. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Just go out, register to vote. I think if more celebrities stuck to that, it would be preferable. I kind of roll my eyes at politics getting involved in every single facet of life. Politics entering our entertainment, entering our sports. Is there any domain where we don't have to have a contentious, heated argument about Kamala or Trump or Biden or Trump? That would be nice. I think some people want little breaks from politics, and pop culture can provide it, but increasingly not.
Yeah, I do think Taylor Swift is not voting on issues related to jobs creation, but if she were, she'd likely be voting for a Democrat. I mean, Democrats have added more jobs to the economy since 1989 than Republicans by a significant margin. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's been 51.5 million jobs added. Only about 1 million of those jobs were under Republicans. So this idea that de facto Republicans are better on the economy, Trump's better on the economy because he makes blanket statements like, under me, we're going to make so much money for you, and we're going to make people want to work and make people want to create jobs. Missing the link of how. How are you going to do that? Because the corporate tax cuts haven't worked. I think it would have been interesting to hear Taylor Swift speak to that actually she is one of the people that will be taxed more on whatever investment she has. I don't know what Taylor Swift's portfolio looks like, but the capital gains tax would certainly affect someone like her who's a billionaire. I think speaking to that and saying, I don't mind saying anything about the economy really would have been interesting. But maybe those aren't the issues she's voting on. She is someone at the end of her tours that has given like $1,000 or $100,000 bonuses to each of the truck drivers that are in this sort of fleet that goes from stadium to stadium. And they've told the story about receiving this bonus from Taylor that, it was a Christmas bonus. They expected, it would hit their accounts, maybe an extra $1,000, an extra $100, a couple $100. And then one of them opened it up on the spot and it was 100,000. And they were like, dude, check yours. So she's someone who really cares about labor, cares about the people who work for her. So she's not a billionaire in the sense that Jeff Bezos is a billionaire, where the money's made off of the extreme exploitation of workers. So I think her commentary on the economy would be interesting and maybe needed right now. And I don't know why it was missing.
I mean, I would just say, in terms of who creates more jobs, because I'm not a partisan person, I don't really have any interest in parsing whether Republicans or Democrats have created more jobs. It might be Democrats, it might be there were just more favorable economic conditions in like the 90s when the Democrats were largely in charge. But certainly Republicans could do more to prioritize job creation. Both people could by having a less punitive, in my view, regulatory regime, fewer federal bureaucrats to investigate small businesses, and unfortunately, both parties make life more difficult for such people, maybe in different ways. The tariffs that both candidates, both the Biden faction and the Trump faction, have been all for in various times, raising prices for American consumers, which also has an impact on that same sort of thing. So I wish that, if someone wants to vote solely on making the economy a better place, there's some better option outside the Democratic and Republican parties. But we'll have to discuss that more at a later juncture. More Rising right after this. 19 days, that's the deadline before the government shuts down on Wednesday, Speaker Mike Johnson was forced to pull a vote from happening on a stopgap measure that would have funded the government through March. He wanted an election integrity bill known as the SAVE Act tied to the bill that would avert a government shutdown. Now, the SAVE Act would have required every voter to provide proof of citizenship in order to register to vote.
We're going to continue to work on this. The whip is going to do the hard work and build consensus. We're going to work through the weekend on that. And I want any member of Congress in either party to explain to the American people why we should not ensure that only U.S. citizens are voting in U.S. elections. We're going to work on that issue around the clock because we have an obligation to the people to do it. And that's what the fight is. That's what's important. It's the most pressing issue right now. And we're going to get this job done.
Former President Trump amped up pressure on Republicans to squash the measure to keep the government open, writing on Truth Social, quote, "If Republicans in the House and Senate don't get absolute assurances on election security, they should in no way, shape, or form go forward with a continuing resolution on the budget. The Democrats are trying to stuff voter registrations with illegal aliens. Don't let it happen. Close it down." Joining us now to discuss what is next is congressional reporter for The Hill, Mychael Schnell. Thanks for coming on, Michael.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
So help us understand this fight a little bit. Do you credit this to Donald Trump's persuasion, or was Johnson up to this already?
I think Johnson was going to face this discontent within his party already. Look, I think the talk about the SAVE Act and being part of the CR, that cropped up largely with the House Freedom Caucus. The House Freedom Caucus putting out a statement over the summer saying that they wanted to see a continuing resolution until into next year. Paired with that, the SAVE Act. President Trump has been a known proponent of the SAVE Act. He helped Speaker Johnson unveil it. Even before the Freedom Caucus put it out, he suggested linking the CR to the SAVE Act. But then the Freedom Caucus put out this statement amping up that pressure. So Speaker Johnson decided to take that route and put the SAVE Act with the 6-month CR that would make government funding end March 28th. But he's now facing this discontent within his party. And really, it's multifaceted, the opposition. There are fiscal hawks who say that they will never support a continuing resolution, despite the fact that it has this SAVE Act attached, which they are supportive of. There are defense hawks who are concerned about the impact a 6-month CR will have on Pentagon funding. And then there are moderates who are concerned about having the threat of a shutdown so close to Election Day. Those folks are the people who are in the most purple districts, running in the toughest races. They're concerned that potentially shutting down the government or having just the threat of it in the abyss could turn off voters. So that's where we stand right now. Speaker Johnson pulled that 6-month CR/SAVE Act from the floor. You heard him right there. He said he's going to plan to try to increase consensus around this legislation over the weekend, and then we'll have to see what next week brings. But as you mentioned, that shutdown deadline is inching closer.
Yeah, let's talk about the first group. Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene both complaining on X that the SAVE Act got attached here, saying that's a shiny object and a distraction, and it being, even though they're supportive, I think, of the spirit of that provision, are annoyed and think this is trying to distract Republicans into voting for, for big government, for government waste, that sort of thing.
Right. So the crux of that is essentially that this is a continuing resolution, which means it would continue current funding levels. And those funding levels were enacted earlier this year because the process was late and delayed, as per usual. It was that 2-part omnibus. It was the 2-part, the 2 spending bills. So now we're hearing from folks like MTG, like Thomas Massie, who say, well, we were in support of those levels before, so why would we vote to continue them? And hey, also, we need to cut funding and we need to cut spending. So that's sort of where that argument is coming from. But the caveat that I've heard from a lot of House Republicans who are opposed to this gambit is that they are supportive of the SAVE Act, but the House has already passed the SAVE Act, and it's up to the Senate now and Democrats in the Senate to bring that up for a vote and hold it. So they're sort of seeing through this gambit.
So we're seeing profits that are extremely high at Boeing and Lockheed Martin. Boeing specifically increased their annual profits 118% from 2022 over to 2023. We're seeing profit margins over $7 billion, $8 billion for Lockheed Martin. Is the conversation around the budget meaningful in a way that they talk about, maybe dollars going to defense contractors, then not going to input and labor costs, but actually being profit, being inflationary? Is there any meaningful conversation about how the money is spent in a way that's inflationary, or is it just the sticker shock that the deficit will be X number if we pass this continuing resolution?
I would say it's been multifaceted, and it depends on who you talk to. Remember, we saw Republicans try to pass these partisan funding bills, ones that were written at levels below what would be the levels right now, but they saw them try to cut funding. They were adding those partisan policy riders that dealt with different issues, and that's why Democrats were against them, and that's even why some of them couldn't even pass through the House, because there was discontent within the House GOP conference about them. So that's sort of where we find ourselves right now, at this crossroads where we're dealing with, once again, a continuing resolution, because the appropriations process grew so partisan with those 12 appropriations bills. So we really haven't seen sort of a traditional conversation about appropriations, because it's been muddied with this political process, especially it being an election year. So that's sort of where we stand right now, because this process has just grown so political.
Mychael Schnell, thank you so much for the update.
Thanks, guys.
Every Jewish Democratic member of the House signed on to a statement rebuking media personality Tucker Carlson and billionaire Elon Musk over alleged anti-Semitism. For background, Carlson recently interviewed a controversial historian named Darryl Cooper, who, according to these allegations, was accused of downplaying the Holocaust and putting greater responsibility on World War II on Winston Churchill rather than Adolf Hitler. Cooper's comments received backlash, which led Democratic Congressman Seth Magaziner. The statement reads in part, quote, "The normalization of Nazism is unacceptable and dangerous and must be forcefully condemned. Americans deserve to know that their leaders will rebuke the cancers of anti-Semitism and Nazism whenever and wherever they appear."
Issued a statement blasting him for, quote, "giving a microphone to a Holocaust denier who spreads Nazi propaganda is a disgusting and sadistic insult to all Americans," end quote. The group, comprised of 24 Jewish members, also slammed billionaire Elon Musk and Senator J.D. Vance. They denounced Musk for praising the interview and Vance for declining to condemn Carlson. There are 2 Republican Jewish members in the House. They did not sign on to the statement. So the question becomes, is this some kind of political ploy ahead of the election, or is this a real concern? Now, I will say I don't have a particular taste for Congress using their time and our public dollars to release statements. Their job is to make policy and to write legislation, and anything to this effect obviously serves a political purpose. But what legislation would they try and pass around this? Are they going to try and censor people who espouse Nazi rhetoric? I don't think that should happen in the United States of America. Is this all about the ongoing support of Israel and talking about anti-Semitism far more than the Islamophobia that has actually claimed lives in the United States after October 7th? It just does feel like a political ploy to me for those reasons.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. I agree. I don't know what business of it is Congress to weigh in, to condemn who appears on whose podcast. That seems well beneath what they should be concerning themselves with. And even if it's not, it's just condemnation. They have the right to speak out, but, we do have the First Amendment in this country, and government should be careful about, what they're formally condemning, because people have the right to engage even in anti-Semitic or racist speech, which I'm not even saying was the case here. In terms of the actual interview, I did not watch the entire thing. I consumed some of it. There were a lot of clips of it on social media. I read a lot of the discussion of it. They said this person, Cooper, they described him as a Holocaust denier. In the parts of the interview I saw, he did not deny that the Holocaust took place at all. What he did was assign some blame for the circumstances that gave rise to World War II to the British side, to the actions of Winston Churchill. Now, I do not agree with his analysis, and I think he was absolutely minimizing the responsibility of Germany for what took place. So I don't agree with his analysis. I don't think it is so far beyond the pale to say, well, mistakes were also made in terms of other countries' policies that gave rise to World War II, including what happened in World War I and so on. You know, you can always tell, history is in fact always more complicated than a good guys, bad guys narrative, right? And you can always, and I think it's important to explain, you know, what actions were taken and put things in greater context. Now that can obviously be done in service of minimizing anti-Semitism or genocide or whatever it is done for that purpose sometimes, and that's wrong. And again, I think this was a very selective, in the other direction, reading of history, and it's been criticized a lot, and I think that criticism is totally fair, but I wouldn't say like, oh, you can't, you know, Winston Churchill, you could never say anything bad about the guy. I know the left has a lot of criticisms of him from the pre-World War II stuff that he was in support of. I think that's fine. History is often, in fact, more complicated, and we should not demonize, you know, efforts to be more, to explore other avenues. But again, that is not I do not agree with the context, the content of the interview to the extent I watched it.
Right. I think members of Congress and even the White House on their personal accounts can denounce Tucker Carlson in their free time, and Daryl Cooper. I mean, Daryl Cooper is someone who spread the big lie. He is a Holocaust denier. And Tucker Carlson did say of Daryl Cooper, he's the best and most honest, popular historian in the United States, and lauded his work on the forbidden topic of trying to understand World War II. So it does seem that Tucker Carlson is endorsing this guy who did help popularize and spread what is known as the big lie, people who deny the realities of the Holocaust. So I understand where members of Congress are coming from. I just don't think that they should use their platform as members of Congress to make statements, to pass legislation saying, you know, we as members of Congress in our official working hours say we don't like this guy or we don't like what these people are saying. I wish they would stick to their job of writing legislation, and I wish Tucker Carlson would stick to his job of journalism and sussing out the truth, because, you know, lauding this historian who is a Holocaust denier, it's not someone who has a strong sense of the truth or finding it. I disagree with Tucker Carlson and Daryl Cooper. I do think it is anti-Semitic to deny the Holocaust. That being said,
I also think it's anti-Semitic to deny the Holocaust. I did not see in what I watched of that interview him deny that the Holocaust took place. Maybe he has elsewhere. I take your word for it if that's what you're asserting. I just don't know. I've no doubt that I disagree with his analysis. As I said, I disagree with the analysis I heard. I think it minimizes the responsibility of the German government, of Hitler, of Nazis, etc. There was some point where he says that they were just unprepared for the number of prisoners of war they took in as a result of conflict with Russia. That is very much a minimizing responsibility. So I agree with you, but I did not know who this person was, to be abundantly clear, until the appearance on Tucker Carlson. I've never heard of him before, so I do not agree with Tucker that he is this incredibly popular, influential, or well-known historian, given I never heard of him. You know, that doesn't mean I'm not the most plugged in online person in the entire world, but I do host a internet YouTube policy show with you. So I think I probably would have heard of him if he was the leading person for alternative analysis or contrarian viewpoints on this subject.
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem, is that now people know who Daryl Cooper is. Tucker Carlson, this widely watched and trusted guy, is saying he's the best and most honest historian. I think that's a problem. The main thing about Congress and the White House denouncing this is that makes people curious. Anytime people feel like their government is hiding things from them, they want to understand exactly what that is. And public education around World War II is abysmal. Because I was in trade school, I did not get the history class that covered World War II. I did not get an education on World War II until I was an undergraduate student at college. So if the reality is that people didn't get that education and they first learn about World War II from Daryl Cooper, who denies the Holocaust happening, that's the main concern here. And as much as I disagree with Carlson for saying this guy's the greatest, and I agree with members of Congress for saying this is dangerous, this is bad, by them publicly denouncing it as official members of the government, unfortunately, it might have the opposite effect and make people more curious. I think that's what the conversation around vaccines has done, telling people they absolutely have to get them, taking down information on vaccines, people questioning the vaccine in big pharmaceutical companies. that has created a curiosity that is dangerous. Even people who mean well and trust doctors are people who are questioning it now because that information has been made inaccessible or has been denounced publicly by the government. So I would even say to those members of Congress, your action, while it might feel good, it's simply emoting. What is the strategic effect of it? And I think that wasn't taken into consideration here. But I am concerned about the impact of the Tucker Carlson interview. That doesn't mean I'm going to say, don't watch it, don't listen to Daryl Cooper. Absolutely read about World War II. Don't just get the information from him and Tucker Carlson.
Right, or you can get that information and then read any of the multiple terrific perspective pieces that were written to respond to it. I read a great one in the Washington Free Beacon by a conservative scholar of Churchill, who explains why he does not agree with the claims that were made in that episode. I think more speech is always the answer to bad speech. Unfortunately, that is not the direction U.S. Congress or U.S. federal government often wants to go with things. They want to engage in censorship implicitly or explicitly. Tell us what you think. More Rising right after this. I first encountered a person named Brianna Wu many years ago on the internet. She was at that time involved in Gamergate, which was a massive controversy on social media, with some progressive and feminist activists claiming the video game fandom was sexist and racist in some ways. Some of those fans, especially conservative ones, fought back and claimed that they were being unfairly misrepresented by progressive journalists and interested people. It was an incredibly toxic feud, although maybe it was downright friendly compared to some of the cancellations and harassment campaigns we've all endured in the subsequent 10+ years. Brianna Wu knows what I'm talking about. For years, she fought with the right and was subjected to personal attacks by the right wing. But then she started to criticize some of the excesses of progressive activism, and more than once tangling with transgender activists in particular, who she thinks are in some ways making their ideas, trans and gay acceptance, less popular and less appealing. Executive Director of the Rebellion PAC, Brianna Wu, joins me now to discuss all this and more. Thanks for being with me, Brianna. It's so nice to talk to you.
I know. I'm your methadone Brianna. I'm not quite as potent as the real thing, but we'll do what we can today.
Well, before we even get started, we're going to do this live right now. I owe you some money because we made a bet online. I bet that Joe Biden would stick it out. I made that bet early on, but I clung to it even like 5 minutes before he dropped out. I was in full denial. You won that one.
I did. I wanted to bet you $1,000, and I wish you'd taken that because I'd be going out. We'd be taking a nice trip to Maine.
Yeah, I said I would do $100 bet. All right, you have Venmo. I think I found you on Venmo. Is the person I'm looking at you? I'm doing it right now. Yes. It's happening. Okay. I'm paying $100. You were right, and like the Lannisters, I pay my debts.
I appreciate that. We won't have to have Twitter feeds anymore, so this is good. We're bringing the temperature down in the country.
It's great. Okay, I'm hitting pay, and there, it's done. Oh, actually, it's making me confirm your phone number. I'll get that from you afterwards.
We'll do it after the show.
We won't share that because I know you have suffered a lot of harassment, obviously, over the years, coming from both sides. Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit more about, your own journey, being someone who feuded so much with right-wing people in mainstream spaces, and then, what has changed in recent times?
Sure. So, to be clear, there are many journalists, including the New York Times, that have said, the Gamergate playbook was adopted by Steve Bannon and the wider right wing. And there are many people that feel it directly led to Trump's victory in, 2016. So, the battle I believed we were fighting, which has turned out to be mistaken, is I thought we were saying, look, there are certain tactics that should be out of bounds. Rape threats, death threats, sending mobs of sock puppet accounts after people to harass them, dox them. All these things are just not productive. They're poisonous for public discussion. And the discussion I believed we were having in the Gamergate days was these are tactics we need social media companies to step up and develop policies for, even though it's difficult to balance that with your First Amendment right. What I found so disgusting is today, I would, in really good faith with you, Robbie, say I think the progressives are doing it just as much as the right wing, if not more, and particularly Free Palestine and the transgender movement. And, I myself am trans. So, it's not that I'm not amenable to the public policy discussion at hand, but these tactics are just poisoning people against us.
Yeah, and I think that's been going on for a long time. You saw it to some degree in the campuses. That was what my first book was about, was how I thought progressive activism, which used to be so in the spirit of the First Amendment, so embracing of the First Amendment, was at that time the trigger warnings and safe space discourse was entering it. That's the first time we talked, because I actually interviewed you for that book, and I'm like, well, this is such a thoughtful, interesting person, not at all like the person I thought you were online from just getting other people's perspectives on it. And then that which started on the campuses, which a lot of people I think expected just to remain there because some college students have believed wacky things for forever. Then they were going to go to the real world and find out you can't just say, oh, what you think offends me, you don't have any right to say that. That doesn't work in the workplace. But then what we found out is enough of those people were able, at least for a couple years, maybe it's gone back the other way, we can talk about that, were able to enforce that norm in elite workplace spaces, and then very much media norms and social media norms as they became moderators and influential people there.
That's right. And Robby, this is something that's probably going to get me some heat for saying, but I'm going to say this to you in really good faith. I shot a segment with Lauren Southern at my home 2 weeks ago, and the idea was, look, we hated each other in the Gamergate years. Let's sit down and have a discussion. And as I was talking to her, I learned about some of the consequences to her life have been from progressives having so much elite power and doing things like writing her Wikipedia in a way that doesn't even, like, I urge anyone to go read it, is wildly slanted, or having all these articles that don't even attempt to show another side. And it has had really serious effects for her life for something she did when she was 19 years old. I don't know how you feel, but I don't think the person someone was at 19 should haunt them for the rest of their life. And I think something I've learned in the last 10 years is this conservative argument. Don't get me wrong, I am not a conservative. I'm 100% Team Democrat. But the way we wield this power is occasionally, actually frequently, I would say, creating enemies faster than we can create friends. And if a political movement is serious, you've got to be in the business of addition and not subtraction. And progressives have just failed at that.
Yeah, and as you point out, it's not just progressives. This ease in which, and I do think this has abated somewhat, but for years, the height of cancel culture being like 2017, 2018, 2019, maybe, so many campaigns against people for having said things online when they were young, especially. I so agree with you on that front. I think we should practice broad forgiveness for people who are high school and younger, because you and I. If a video camera had followed me at all times as a kid, or if there was a running transcript of everything I had ever said when I was a kid, no one could have lived up to this. I think people who love to say, well, that's just being, enforcing social responsibility. I'm like, no one was a saint. People say cruel things to fit in with others because they're afraid of cruelty being visited on them themselves. And you have to grow and learn, and it is just pathologically unfair to me what we have been putting kids through. I think some of that has eased up, but our mainstream media has been totally complicit in that, because it wouldn't work if they wouldn't then just say, this allegations resurfaced against who X, Y, and Z. Well, you're writing about it now. You're legitimizing it.
I think that's dead on, Robby. And I think this is part of a wider trend of, I think both sides, but especially progressivism, has gotten so comfortable with moralizing in lieu of an argument. And, when I grew up in Mississippi, I was only surrounded by conservatives. And I heard this moralizing from the fringe right. One of the reasons I changed sides is I noticed that the Democrats, when they were talking to me about public policy, meaning trade policy or welfare policy or racial justice policy, they were willing to go into arguments and not just moralize everything. I believe that one of the reasons progressivism has so much less salience today than it did 10 years ago is we have gotten intellectually lazy, like a muscle that has atrophied from lack of use. Intellectually, we are weak right now, and we cannot defend the things that we believe. I think there's a really strong ethical and pragmatic public policy argument that we need a structural reckoning with racial injustice in this country. But the way to get there is to talk to people on the face about what we know, how much it's going to cost, how we move forward, what the advantage is for them. Just calling everyone a white supremacist and a racist in sight, people are tired of this, and it's why the vast majority of people in the middle are tuning out of all of politics. The first side to drop these identity games and talk to the middle of the country in honest, plain terms with respect is the side that's going to win.
We'll be back with the rest of my interview with Brianna Wu this weekend. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned. More Rising right after this. As Republicans grapple with their messaging on reproductive issues, former President Donald Trump has dubbed himself the leader of IVF. Here he is during Tuesday night's debate.
President Harris,
excuse me, I have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization.
A few weeks before that, not only did he declare support for in vitro fertility treatment, IVF, he also took it a step further, saying that if reelected, insurance companies would actually have to pay for this procedure. Let's listen.
But for the first time ever, your government will pay for or require insurance companies to pay for all costs associated with IVF fertility treatment.
Surely the reason behind Trump's embrace for IVF for all is Harris has been leading with women voters. According to a recent ABC News Ipsos poll, she's leading Trump 54% to 41%. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer heard Trump loud and clear. Per Axios, the top Democrat in the Senate is planning to unveil a bill within the next 2 weeks that mirrors Trump's proposal to mandate insurance coverage of IVF treatments. The power move will likely force a bigger wedge between Republicans who voted down a measure that Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth introduced in June, which would establish a right to access IVF treatments and mandate that public and private insurance plans cover such treatments. So we've heard the allegations from J.D. Vance that the Democrats are just copying whatever Trump says. I said on a Friday Rising episode with Amber, isn't this good that if a policy is popular that both parties choose to adopt it? It seems common sense to me, Robby.
Yes, and I think being in favor of making IVF available is a very good thing. I'm having trouble understanding. I don't think so. I'm in full support of IVF. I think people should use IVF. I don't know that I don't think the federal government should require insurance plans to cover it. I think if you want an insurance plan that covers it, you should be able to get that one if there is. I think I want more choice and control over people in terms of what kind of insurance coverage they need, what works for them. I don't know that I would blanket say at the federal level this needs to be covered is, I guess, what I would. Again, we're not talking about banning it or getting rid. Like, it should be available to people who want it, but should it be subsidized or through the insurance system? It can be, and if insurance plans want to offer that kind of coverage, and maybe you pay a higher premium or to be on that kind of insurance plan, that's all okay. But just kind of saying that mandating that they have to do it or the government has to do it is probably not a good idea in my view.
I don't know. I think paying out of pocket for fertility treatments is extremely expensive. And I'm sure there's a lot of folks that have had to work until they could afford a home and afford to have a child. That means that maybe they're a little bit older. Maybe it's a little bit harder to conceive. So they require IVF in order to conceive a baby successfully. I think it's a smart move for Republicans to be on board with this and for Trump to be talking about it so much. Because I think there's a lot of people that, see the healthcare industry as one that unnecessarily denies treatment. Of course, if it's required for insurance to cover it, there's still going to be the usual process of questioning whether or not it's necessary, denials. They're going to have to likely prove that this woman is someone who cannot conceive a baby naturally, that it's been difficult, that she's been trying. I can imagine, even though it's covered by insurance, this still being an insanely arduous process to get that coverage. I had a necessary scan yesterday that if I were to apply my insurance, it would cost $1,600. But if I were to opt for self-pay, the same exact care costs $860. That doesn't make any sense. The American healthcare system is an absolute disaster. And I think requiring that insurance covers, what was that?
We agree on that. That's because of the insurance system, is because prices are disguised because you're not actually paying the price, so they don't, the people charging the price, I mean, the doctors, the medical system it's a little bit like tuition, where it's because you're not, for people, you're going to take out, you're paying it through some indirect mechanism. You still pay for it ultimately, or you pay a portion of it, or you pay it later. But because it's not the same as going to the grocery store where I, hand over $100 for groceries or something. These days, a lot more than that. But you know what you're buying, you know exactly what it costs, and you pay for it. In the medical healthcare system, it's the price is disguised through all these mechanisms, so the people actually providing the service can upcharge you because they're not necessarily charging you. That's the whole problem with the system. In terms of the difficulty of the hoops you have to jump through to get IVF, I agree with you. I bet it's very, very arduous. I don't really want it to be more arduous, but that's the problem with having a subsidized system, because if it's required that they pay for it, if we're all paying for it, then vis-a-vis the insurance system, where the cost is distributed amongst the people who pay into the insurance plan, well, then we do want to make sure it's necessary, et cetera, because it's our money ultimately being used for it. You want some kind of, if people are just paying it for it on their own, then I don't want it to be arduous for them. They should get what they're paying for. But if the cost is then broken up and paid for by everyone, either all the taxpayers or everyone on the insurance plan, then you do want it to be thorough to make sure it's being done with all necessity, so that people aren't getting medical services that cost tons of money when they don't need them, because that cost is being passed on to other people.
Well, that's how all insurance companies work.
Well, I know.
I think that's why. Yeah,
that's why I want it to be a voluntary thing where you pay into it, and that's how it works, because you're a participant in it, rather than having it be required.
What's interesting, though, is that with a public option, or with rather Medicare for all, let's look at that, we would save trillions of dollars. We're spending so much more because of these insurance companies actually being separate. We lack a negotiating power as consumers. And so insurance companies are keeping prices pretty high. Working with a lot of our hospitals, we're paying more for the same exact treatment, sometimes worse treatment, than other modern Western countries. We would save nearly $20 trillion by switching to a system that is a single payer healthcare system, because we would be able to negotiate those costs down. So yes, it is the kind of thing where insurance companies make their money and are able to exist because they pool in steady money from all of their members. And then when someone has an emergency, the money is there to pay for it. And that's just how insurance works. So if everyone's sort of on the same plan in a way, we can negotiate prices down. We can free up a lot of our productive capacity by having those insurance workers work in other industries. So I think let's keep at this. Let's tell Trump everybody really wants dental care to be included in their health care, because let's face it, dental care is a healthcare issue. If someone has an infection in their mouth, that can spread to their brain and blood very quickly. And so this idea that it's separate is ridiculous. I think let's keep bullying the politicians into competing for who has the most popular policies. Let's tell Donald Trump Kamala Harris is covering dental care and see what happens next.
We'll have more Rising right after this.
Debate over the debate moderators continues. The right has predictably blamed ABC News' presidential debate moderators David Muir and Lindsay Davis for biased questions and fact checks. Take a listen to Megyn Kelly.
I'm disgusted. I'm ashamed of those moderators at ABC News. They did exactly what their bosses wanted them to do. The person who runs ABC News is a close personal friend of Kamala Harris, that is responsible for Kamala Harris and her husband meeting. And they did Dana Walden's bidding tonight. It was 3-1 on that debate stage this evening. Hi, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly, a special program tonight for you reacting to the debate. It was 3-1. It's very easy to look like you know what you're doing when both moderators are entirely on your side. Trump did the best he could under the circumstances, but it really was like three fighters in the ring pummeling one opponent. And Trump tried to take them all on. He did fine. He did as best as he could. He was thrown a few times to the point where he was unnecessarily defensive and he was getting angry. And so was I. Were you? This was a mistake to trust ABC News.
Over on MSNBC, though, Morning Joe thought the debate moderators were too easy on Trump. Let's watch.
Anybody that thinks that's why he lost the debate, that he was corrected 3 times on, well, but, you know, he got about 7 minutes more than he was supposed to because the debate moderators allowed him to keep breaking the rules. Every answer she had, they would try to move on to something else. He would blurt something else, crazy stuff for a minute or 2 minutes, breaking the rules. And I was actually sitting there going, are you going to enforce your rules or not? I mean, I don't know if you remember, but when he came on our show, he didn't talk over us. No. Or we hung up. So
too easy on Trump. Look, they could have, I agree that the moderation was absolutely terrible. It gets worse the more I think about it. They fact-checked Trump, and they didn't fact-check Harris, and there were things they could have fact-checked her on. Trump spoke more because they engaged in combat with him. They should have left that to her. They should have done it exactly the way that CNN handled the first debate, where they left it to Trump to correct things Biden was saying, Biden to correct things Trump was saying. Biden didn't do a very good job of that, as the entire world got to see. But they presented the questions. I think there were 1 or 2 times where Jake Tapper, Dana Bash said, I'm not sure that was an answer to the question. Would you like to answer it? And then they moved on. That was the way to handle it. These people, Muir and his co-host, they just fact-checked Trump, and in some cases where it's ambiguous or it's debate, they got into an exchange with him about the crime rates. So yes, crime rates have gone down, but it depends on what time frame you're talking about. It depends where you're talking about. And the conservative answer to the FBI's claims that crime is going down is, well, not all police municipalities are reporting data to the FBI anymore, and are certain high crime areas no longer being counted. It's a complicated picture, which is exactly what the debate should do. Kamala Harris can say, well, crime is actually going down, and here's what the statistics say. And then Donald Trump could respond, well, that's not true because of this, so and so on and so forth reason. The moderators don't need to say, well, actually, your claim is wrong, Donald Trump. Moving on to Kamala Harris, like, that's what it was. It happened repeatedly, and it was totally one-sided.
I disagree. I think, if we're talking about the debate moderators doing a good job or not, that they're the reason he lost, you're clearly on the losing side. And Trump is just taking this loss so poorly. When he was directly asked questions, he didn't answer them. When he was asked about killing the bipartisan immigration bill, he started talking about Kamala Harris and how they failed to get done the student loan forgiveness plan because it was blocked in the courts. He didn't answer the questions he was asked. That's why he lost. He didn't lose because he lied. Everybody knows he lies. He gets fact-checked in the media all the time. It's interesting to see how angry Megyn Kelly is, though, because very recently, within a year of time, I believe, it was September 2023, so I guess it's a year away now, she sat down with Donald Trump and asked about his comments directed towards women, saying they're fat pigs, dog slobs, and disgusting animals. Trump left that interview with Megyn Kelly and said you could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever. He said in September of 23 that she was nasty. He insinuated that she was on her period, and that's why she was asking tough questions. So this idea that now she's jumping to his defense because the moderators simply fact check him, it's just all for clicks and it's all for views. And they found that this was an attack line that would win because exit polling shows that Harris won this debate by 23 points, and polling asked to people who watched the debate shows that overwhelmingly people believe Harris won. So it's an incredible cope, and it makes people look worse, and it makes him look weaker at a time where he's saying he doesn't want to debate again.
Well, I would not want to debate again under those conditions where just one side is going to be fact-checked. I'm sorry.
Well, he said even on
can
Fox News.
You can think he lost the debate. That's fine. I think he did squander several opportunities to explain his vision for this country. I think he was asked, he was kept on unfriendly subjects repeatedly by the moderators. Look, they could have interjected, or they could have, after Kamala Harris claimed that Trump was threatening political violence over saying it's going to be a bloodbath if he loses. That was clearly referencing the economic situation, saying that the state of the economy will be a bloodbath if he loses. So chalking that up to political violence was a wrongful statement on her part. They did not step in to correct that, which again is fine. I don't think they should, but they shouldn't have done it on the other side either. And, she didn't get any questions. He got questions again and again about January 6th, which he's answered and given his views on the past election a million times now. I think it's fine to think his attitude toward that is absolutely disqualifying, but it's not like we're breaking exactly new ground here. Meanwhile, she got no questions about the sitting president, Joe Biden, about her knowledge of his cognitive decline, which she, I believe, is absolutely complicit in covering up. No questions about his fitness to be the president right now. So it was just all conducted on hostile and unfair and unfriendly ground to Donald Trump. In stark contrast, again, with the previous debate, this isn't even like a criticism of the media writ large. Clearly, CNN demonstrated they could have done, that they did a fair debate. I'd be fine with them doing it again, Dana Bash and Jake Tapper, but these people, no way, never again.
Well, he did say it would be a bloodbath. She didn't need to say the context. She was pointing out that this is a guy who regularly uses violent words to describe things. That's true. It's true that he said the words, it was a bloodbath. The idea that he was talking about a civil war is not something she said in the way that other people have insinuated when quoting Trump on that. So no, she didn't lie in the debate. Trump did many times. I think it's fine he was fact-checked. I don't think that's the reason he lost. Harris was asked tough questions. She's not Joe Biden. She said that on the debate stage. She should be asked about her policies and her plans as president. That's what the American people are interested in. You might disagree with the questions they chose to ask, but in the interest of fairness, I don't think the moderators did anything wrong by correcting the record when Trump deliberately lied about several things on the debate stage. It's dangerous to have millions of people watching and have the record go uncorrected. So I actually don't disagree with the moderators live fact-checking the debate. There were even some lies that Trump said that they missed. It is true that crime is down, and if you look at the data reported by police precincts in the largest cities across the country, there are very few exceptions. Washington, D.C. is one where there are some metrics of crime that have gone up, but violent crime is down across the country. And so this idea that Donald Trump has to lie to make his fear-mongering rhetoric around, oh, crime is up, they're eating your pets, this and that. He has to lie to make his fear-mongering work. That's a sad state of affairs for our country, and he deserves to lose if that's his approach to politics.
I mean, I think there were certainly statements that she made that could have been fact-checked. She said, for instance, there's not one member of the military who's in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world for the first time this century. That is technically true, but thousands of troops in Iraq, U.S. troops in Iraq and Syria are still in dangerous situations. A U.S. troop was killed, obviously, in Jordan in January in that base in Syria. This is fact-checked by NPR. Her statement that Trump had left us the worst economy since the Great Depression was, obviously that was because of COVID, and then by the time he had left office, the situation had improved enough that it was no longer the worst situation since the Great Depression. So again, these are not things that I actually think it was the moderator's job to bring up. I think it was Trump's job to bring that up. It just shouldn't be one-sided, because it was like Trump debating Kamala Harris and two other people. If they're going to have that, then they should have one of the moderators have some sympathy or friendliness or rapport with the right or with Trump, so that then he can prosecute against Kamala Harris when things are said that could be corrected or complicated. Again, that would not be my ideal. My ideal would be the way they did it last time. That does it for us today, however, on Rising. Great being with you today. Jessica, nice sharing this space virtually one last time. Of course, Amber will be in here tomorrow, as will you. Are you hosting tomorrow?
Yes. Yes,
Great.
it will be me and Amber back for another Rising Fridays in the old studio before you all move on to the very shiny place that Robby says it looks like it's made for a TV set about a news show.
It's a new show about a new show. We're going to get more and more meta, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to get started. For now, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any of our content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're available anywhere you listen to podcasts, and I will see you next week.
Bye, y'all.